My 11-year-old son was sitting in his wheelchair on the sidewalk. He was waiting for the ice cream truck and smiling at the sunset. Then Karen from the HOA came up fast. She was yelling about fire dangers and ugly things in the yard. Before I could stop her, she took her big weed torch from the garage. She turned it on and shot the big flame right at my son. The fire hit his legs and wheelchair. He screamed loud and waved his arms. His eyes looked at me full of fear. "Daddy, it's burning me." Karen just laughed like she did something good. She did not know the man running to him with a fire extinguisher was the fire chief of the whole county. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you are watching from, and please hit subscribe for more stories where the good guys always win. My 11-year-old son was sitting in his wheelchair on the sidewalk, right where the concrete warmed first when the sun began to drop. He liked that spot. From there, he could see both ends of the street. He could hear kids laughing 2 blocks away, and if the ice cream truck came early, he'd be the first to spot it. He leaned forward slightly, hands resting on the armrests, rocking just enough to show excitement without meaning to. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink, and he smiled at it like it was something special just for him. That was how he always smiled. Wide, hopeful, unguarded. He was waiting for ice cream. I was a few steps away, loading a box into the truck, watching him out of the corner of my eye the way parents of disabled kids learn to do. Not hovering, not ignoring, just always aware. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet to expect trouble. Then Karen from the HOA came up fast. She didn't walk like someone out for a stroll. She moved with purpose, sharp steps, shoulders tight, jaw set like she'd already decided how this would end. She came from her driveway, cutting across the grass without slowing, eyes locked on my son like he was an obstacle in her way. She didn't greet him. She didn't greet me. She started yelling before she even reached the sidewalk. "You can't have that thing out here," she snapped. "Do you have any idea how dangerous this looks?" My son's smile vanished. He looked up at her, confused, then turned his head toward me like he was checking to see if this was real. Loud voices scared him. Sudden anger scared him more. I straightened up. "Ma'am," I said calmly, already stepping closer. "You need to back away." Karen ignored me. She waved her arms at the sidewalk, the yard, the wheelchair. "This is a fire hazard," she shouted. Ugly equipment, blocking sight lines, making the neighborhood look unsafe. "I've warned people about this before." My son's hands tightened on the armrests. His shoulders hunched in the way they always did when he was overwhelmed. "I'm just waiting for ice cream," he said quietly. Karen didn't soften. She got closer. Too close. "You don't get special treatment," she snapped. "Rules are rules." I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, the one that comes from years of dealing with people who think authority means permission to be cruel. "Step away from my son," I said again. Louder this time. Karen turned her head slightly, annoyed, like I was interrupting her. Before I could reach them, she pivoted and stormed back toward her garage. For one brief, foolish second, I thought she was leaving. She wasn't. She came back holding a large weed torch, metal handle, long nozzle, bright orange canister, the kind meant to burn weeds off driveways. My stomach dropped. "Put that down," I shouted. She didn't hesitate. She turned the valve. The torch roared to life. A long, violent flame burst out, loud and sudden, the sound ripping through the quiet street. Neighbors' doors opened. Someone screamed. Karen aimed it, not at the ground, at my son. The flame shot forward. It hit the front of his wheelchair and his legs. He screamed. A raw, terrified sound that cut straight through me. He waved his arms wildly, trying to pull away, trying to escape something he didn't understand. "Daddy," he cried. "It's burning me." His eyes found mine, full of fear, full of trust. That look shattered me. Karen laughed. Not nervous laughter, not shock. A short, sharp laugh, like she'd proven a point. This is what happens when people ignore fire safety. She said, "I was already moving. I dropped everything and ran. I didn't shout. I didn't think." I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the truck in one motion, sprinting toward them as the flame continued to roar. My son was crying now, panicking, his wheelchair shaking as he tried to push back. Neighbors were shouting. Someone yelled to call 911. Karen didn't stop. She didn't turn the torch away. She believed no one would dare challenge her. She was wrong. I reached them and squeezed the handle. The extinguisher exploded in a thick white cloud. Foam and powder swallowed the flame instantly. The fire vanished. My son coughed and cried as I dropped to my knees in front of him, pulling him close, shielding him with my body. "I've got you," I said urgently. "You're okay, I'm here." Karen stumbled back, coughing, shocked that her fire was gone. "What do you think you're doing?" she shouted. I stood up slowly, very slowly. I didn't raise my voice. "I'm the fire chief," I said, "and you're done." The street went silent. Karen's face changed. First confusion, then disbelief, then fear. Sirens began to wail in the distance. She looked around at the neighbors, the phones recording, the white residue settling over everything. For the first time, she understood. And for the first time, she had no control at all. The white cloud hung in the air like a sudden winter storm. For a moment, no one could see anything. The roar of the torch was gone, replaced by coughing, shouting, and the hiss of the extinguisher dying in my hands. Powder drifted down onto the sidewalk, onto the grass, onto Karen's shoes. It coated the front of my son's wheelchair in chalky white, dulling the sharp colors that had just been touched by fire. My son was still screaming, not from pain now, but from shock. His whole body shook, arms flailing until I wrapped myself around him, pulling him close, anchoring him to something solid. He buried his face against my chest, clutching my jacket like it was the only thing keeping him in the world. "It's okay," I said over and over, my voice low and steady even though my heart was hammering like it wanted to escape my ribs. "I've got you. The fire's gone. You're safe." He sobbed into my shoulder, each breath coming fast and uneven. Around us, the street exploded into noise. "Oh my God, did you see that? She aimed it at him?" Doors slammed open. Footsteps pounded on concrete. A woman screamed from across the street. Someone shouted that the fire department was on the way. Another voice yelled to get water, towels, anything. Karen stood a few steps back, blinking through the settling powder. Her torch lay on the ground, still hissing faintly, the flame choked out by foam. She stared at it like it had betrayed her. "What did you do?" she snapped hoarsely. "You can't just spray that everywhere." I didn't answer her. My entire focus was on my son. I pulled back just enough to look at him, really look. His legs were trembling, his breathing shallow and fast. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold on to me. "Daddy," he whispered. "It was hot." "I know," I said immediately. "I know. You did the right thing. You screamed. You stayed with me." He nodded weakly, trusting me completely, even though the world had just shown him it could be cruel without warning. I checked him carefully. Hands, legs, the front of the wheelchair, doing what years of emergency training had drilled into my body. Slow, methodical, calm. He was scared, but he was here. Behind us, Karen found her voice again. "You overreacted," she shouted. "That extinguisher could have hurt someone. I was handling a safety issue." That was when the anger hit, not a burst, a weight, the kind that settles deep and heavy, cold and controlled. I stood up slowly, placing myself between Karen and my son. I didn't shout. I didn't rush her. I let silence do the work. "Step back," I said. She scoffed, brushing powder from her cardigan like she was offended by the mess more than anything else. "You don't tell me what to do," she snapped. "I'm responsible for this neighborhood's safety." I met her eyes. "No," I said. "You're responsible for nothing anymore." Sirens grew louder, closer. Karen heard them too. She turned her head toward the sound, then back to me, irritation flickering across her face. "You called the fire department?" she demanded. "This doesn't require—" "I didn't call anyone," I said. "But they're coming." Her lips tightened. "You think a title scares me?" she said. "I deal with officials all the time." I reached into my jacket, slowly, deliberately, pulled out my badge, held it where she couldn't miss it. "I'm the fire chief," I said again. "And you just used an open flame on a child." The words landed, not all at once, but enough. Her face drained of color. That's not," she stammered. "I didn't know." "You didn't care," I replied. "That's worse." The first engine rounded the corner with lights flashing, siren cutting through the evening air. Neighbors stepped back instinctively as the truck pulled up hard along the curb. Firefighters jumped down, scanning the scene in seconds. "Chief," one of them called out. "Recognition immediate." I nodded once, never taking my eyes off Karen. Secure the torch, I said. Then keep her away from the child. They moved instantly. One firefighter kicked the torch farther from Karen's reach. Another positioned himself between her and my son without hesitation. Karen raised her hands in protest. This is ridiculous, she shouted. I was preventing a hazard. A firefighter looked at her like she was speaking another language. You created one, he said flatly. Police sirens followed, 2. Then 3 patrol cars sliding into place behind the engine. Officers spilled out, eyes sharp, hands controlled. Neighbors spoke all at once. She aimed it at him. He was just waiting for ice cream. She laughed. Karen tried to talk over them. You don't understand, she shouted. I was enforcing safety. No one listened. An officer approached me. Sir, he said respectfully, then glanced at my badge. Chief, I nodded. She used a weed torch on a child, I said. Open flame, multiple witnesses. The officer's jaw tightened. He turned to Karen. Ma'am, he said, turn around. Karen froze. What? She demanded. You can't be serious. Turn around, he repeated. She looked around for support. There was none. Slowly, reluctantly, she turned. The cuffs came out. Metal clicked. Final. Karen's shoulders slumped as reality finally caught up to her. She stopped yelling, stopped arguing. Her voice cracked as she tried one last time. I was just trying to keep people safe. The officer guiding her forward didn't respond. Behind me, my son tugged at my jacket. Daddy, he said softly. Is she gone? I knelt down beside him again, meeting his eyes. She can't hurt you anymore, I said. I promise. He nodded, breathing finally slowing, his grip loosening just a little. The fire engine lights washed the street in red and white. Foam drifted away on the breeze. The sunset had faded into deep purple, the ice cream truck long forgotten. But my son was alive, and the fear, the real fear, was over. The white powder kept drifting long after the fire was gone. It floated in the air, slow and quiet, settling on the sidewalk, the grass, the mailboxes, and the hoods of parked cars like strange, out-of-place snow. The street smelled sharp and chemical now, mixed with the faint burnt scent that lingered in the air. Everything felt unreal, like the world had been paused mid-scene and Nay was sure who was allowed to move again. My son was still in my arms. He wasn't screaming anymore. The panic had burned itself out, leaving behind shaking breaths and quiet whimpers that came and went like aftershocks. His forehead pressed into my chest, his fingers curled tightly into my jacket, as if letting go might bring the fire back. I stayed exactly where I was. I didn't rush him. I didn't force calm. I let him feel safe first. Around us, the street slowly came back to life. Neighbors spoke in hushed voices. Someone handed out bottles of water. A woman wrapped a blanket around my son's shoulders without asking, her hands gentle and careful, like she was afraid even touch might frighten him again. Karen stood several feet away now, separated by firefighters and police. She looked smaller than she had minutes earlier, not physically, but emotionally. Her posture had collapsed inward. The anger that had driven her had nowhere to go now. She kept wiping powder from her sleeves, her hair, her shoes, like if she could just clean herself up enough, this would all stop being real. It didn't. An officer readjusted his grip on her arm. Ma'am, stop moving, he said evenly. I'm not resisting, Karen snapped weakly. This stuff is everywhere. The officer didn't respond. Another firefighter approached me, kneeling down so he was eye level with my son. Hey buddy, he said softly. You're doing great. Can you take a slow breath with me? My son hesitated, then nodded. They breathed together, slow in, slow out, until the shaking eased just a little. I felt something loosen in my chest. The white cloud thinned as the breeze picked up, carrying the last of the powder away down the block. What was left behind were footprints, dozens of them, pressed into the residue on the concrete. Evidence of how many people had run toward danger instead of away from it. Karen noticed. The looks now, not just phones, faces, real faces, people she'd known for years, people she'd fined, threatened, talked down to. They weren't afraid of her anymore. That realization hit her harder than the cuffs. You're all misunderstanding this, she said again, her voice cracking. I was trying to prevent an accident. A firefighter turned toward her. You caused one, he said flatly. Karen's mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. An officer stepped closer with a notepad. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you a few questions," he said. "You're not required to answer right now." Karen shook her head quickly. No, I want to explain. I always explain. That's what I do." Her words tumbled out faster now, desperate. "There have been complaints. The wheelchair, the extension cords, the equipment. It looks dangerous. I had to make a point." The officer stopped writing. "A point?" he asked quietly. Karen nodded. "Yes. People don't listen unless you hurt someone?" he finished. She flinched. "That's not what I meant. But that's what you did," he replied. Behind me, my son lifted his head slightly. "Daddy?" he asked. I leaned down instantly. "I'm right here. She's not coming back, right?" I met his eyes. "No," I said. "She's not." He nodded, then leaned back into me, trusting that answer completely. Firefighters began packing up equipment. Police officers spoke quietly into radios. Statements were being taken, timelines established. Every action now had purpose. Karen was guided toward a patrol car. She resisted at first, not physically, but emotionally, dragging her feet, turning her head toward the crowd. "You all saw what happened," she said loudly. "You know I wasn't trying to hurt him." No one answered. A woman stepped forward from the crowd. "He was just waiting for ice cream," she said. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "And you laughed." Karen froze. "Enough." Her neighbor spoke. "I heard him scream," a man said. "And you didn't stop." Karen's eyes darted around, searching for someone, anyone, to contradict them. No one did. The officer opened the patrol car door. Karen hesitated one last time. "This isn't fair," she whispered. The officer met her eyes. "Neither was what you did," he said. The door closed. The sound wasn't loud, but it echoed. As the patrol car pulled away, the street exhaled. Not relief. Release. Fire trucks shut down their lights. Officers shook hands with neighbors, thanked them for stepping up. Someone finally found the ice cream truck driver and told him what had happened. He turned the truck around quietly, lights off, music silent, respect written all over his face. I stayed where I was until my son said he was ready to move. Then I lifted him carefully, helping him adjust in his wheelchair, checking him one more time, hands steady now. "You did really well," I told him. He shrugged a little. "I was scared." "I know," I said, "and you were brave anyway." He smiled weakly at that. As we rolled back toward the house, the sidewalk looked different, not because of the powder, not because of the trucks, because the danger was gone, and everyone knew it. Authority doesn't disappear all at once. It erodes. It weakens when people stop believing in it. When the voice that once commanded silence is met instead with stillness, with witnesses who no longer look away. Karen felt that erosion the moment the patrol car door closed behind her. Inside the car, the world sounded muffled. The shouting, the sirens, the murmurs from the crowd, all of it faded into a dull hum through the glass. She sat stiffly in the back seat, hands cuffed in front of her now, wrists dusted white from the fire extinguisher residue. Her cardigan was stained and rumpled, her hair no longer perfectly arranged. She stared straight ahead. Outside, the street slowly resumed movement. Firefighters rolled hoses back onto the truck. One of them shut a compartment door with a metallic clang that echoed down the block. Police officers continued taking statements, calm and methodical, asking neighbors to repeat what they had seen, what they had heard, where they were standing. Facts were being built. Carefully. Irreversibly. I stayed close to my son, my hand resting lightly on his shoulder as he sat in his wheelchair. He was quiet now, exhausted by fear, by crying, by adrenaline. His eyelids drooped, but he refused to sleep. Not yet. He needed to see the end of this. He needed to know it was real. "Daddy," he said softly, "are they really taking her?" "Yes," I said. "They are. And she can't tell them what to do?" I shook my head. "No. She can't." That answer seemed to settle something inside him. He leaned back slightly, his shoulders lowering, the tension easing from his small frame. Across the street, Karen's house stood with its garage door still open. The weed torch was gone now, sealed in an evidence container, but the open space felt symbolic, like a mouth left open mid-argument, suddenly silenced. An officer approached me, notepad tucked under his arm. "Chief," he said respectfully, though his tone was careful. This wasn't a professional exchange now. This was personal. We've got multiple eyewitness statements, video from at least 6 phones, and your extinguisher footage from the truck cam. I nodded. She admitted to using the torch, he continued. She claimed it was a demonstration for safety. I let out a slow breath. Document everything, I said. Words matter. He nodded. Already done. A second patrol car arrived. Not lights and sirens this time, just steady and quiet. A senior officer stepped out, took one look at the scene, and exhaled sharply. This is going to move fast, he said to me. HOA, or... Not good, I replied. Karen watched all of this through the rear window of the patrol car. She saw officers conferring, saw firefighters talking quietly, saw neighbors standing together instead of scattering. This was not how things usually went for her. Normally, people avoided eye contact. Normally, conversations stopped when she walked by. Normally, rules were bent to accommodate her tone, her confidence, her insistence that she knew best. Now, no one was looking at her. They were looking past her. That was the moment her authority truly ended. She leaned forward slightly, pressing her cuffed hands against the divider. I want to speak to whoever's in charge, she said sharply. The officer in the front seat didn't turn around. You already did, he replied. Her jaw tightened. This is being blown out of proportion, she insisted. I was addressing a fire hazard. That child... Ma'am, the officer interrupted, his voice firm now. Do not speak about the victim. Karen fell silent. For the first time since she stepped onto that sidewalk, no words came out. Outside, the last fire truck pulled away, lights off. The street lights flickered on, bathing the neighborhood in soft yellow glow. Evening had arrived quietly, indifferent to the chaos that had unfolded minutes earlier. I helped my son adjust in his chair, checking the straps, brushing white powder from his sleeves. You want to go inside? I asked gently. He nodded. As we turned toward the house, a neighbor stepped forward, a man who had lived next door for 10 years and barely spoken more than a greeting. Chief, he said quietly, I'm glad you were here. So am I replied. Behind us, the patrol car started its engine. Karen looked one last time through the glass as it pulled away from the curb. She saw my son safe beside me. She saw neighbors standing together. She saw her house receding in the distance. Everything she thought she controlled was shrinking behind her. At the station, the process continued. Booking, photographs, paperwork. Karen's voice returned briefly when she demanded a phone call, a lawyer, someone, anyone, who could restore the balance she believed had been unfairly tipped against her. But the answers were procedural now. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Please wait. Titles meant nothing in those rooms. Policies didn't bend. Outside the holding area, an officer spoke quietly into a phone. HOA president? Yes, I understand. No, that won't matter. Karen overheard that part. Her head snapped up. What do you mean it won't matter? She demanded. The officer met her eyes calmly. This isn't an HOA issue, he said. This is a criminal one. The words landed heavy. Criminal. She leaned back against the bench, staring at the floor, her breathing shallow and fast. Back at home, my son sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water, wrapped in a blanket someone had brought from the neighbor's house. He watched the ice melt slowly in the glass, tracking it with his finger. Daddy, he said after a while. She thought she was important. Yes, I said. She wasn't, he added. I smiled softly. No, I said. She wasn't. Later that night, as statements were finalized and calls were made, a message came through from the HOA board. Karen Whitaker was removed from her position effective immediately. No hearing, no appeal, just a line of text that confirmed what the street already knew. Authority, when abused, does not survive daylight. And on that sidewalk, under a fading sunset and a cloud of white powder, Karen's authority ended, not with a shout, but with the quiet certainty that it would never return. The sidewalk had never felt so exposed. It was the same strip of concrete my son had rolled over 100 times before, on the way to the park, to the corner store, to wait for the ice cream truck. But now it felt like a stage, every crack and shadow lit by patrol lights, every sound magnified by the silence of people who were watching something irreversible unfold. Karen stood beside the patrol car, not inside it yet, not free either. She hovered in that narrow space between consequence and denial, hands cuffed in front of her, fingers twitching as if she still expected to be able to gesture her way out of this. The officer holding her arm didn't rush. There was no need. This wasn't a chase. It was a conclusion. Across the street, neighbors had gathered in small clusters. Some stood on their porches. Others had crossed the road, stopping just short of the curb like an invisible line held them back. Phones were still out, but fewer now. The shock had settled into something quieter. Attention. Karen noticed. She lifted her chin, trying to reclaim the posture she'd worn for years. The posture that said, "I belong above you." But it didn't sit right anymore. Her shoulders slumped despite the effort. "This is completely unnecessary," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I was addressing a safety concern. Anyone here would have done the same." No one answered. The officer beside her adjusted his grip. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "you're under arrest for aggravated assault with a dangerous instrument." The words cut through the air cleanly. Arrest, not detainment, not questioning. Arrest. Karen's breath caught. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "You can't arrest me for trying to prevent a fire." The officer didn't argue. "You can explain your position to your attorney," he said. "Right now, you're being taken into custody." She laughed once, a brittle, hollow sound that fooled no one. "This is harassment," she said. "You're doing this because of who he is." She tilted her head toward me. The officer followed her gaze briefly, then low. Oaked back at her. "No," he said. "We're doing this because of what you did." That was the first time her confidence truly cracked. She turned her head slowly, scanning the faces around her, searching for agreement, for sympathy, for anything that might resemble support. She found none. A woman across the street met her eyes and didn't look away. A man who'd once crossed the road to avoid her stood with his arms folded, jaw set. Someone whispered, "That poor kid, not quietly enough." Karen's mouth opened, closed. She swallowed. "I want to make a statement," she said quickly. "Right now?" "You can do that at the station," the officer replied. He guided her one step closer to the open back door of the patrol car. Karen stopped walking. Her heels planted themselves against the concrete like roots. "No," she said, "I'm not getting in there." The officer didn't raise his voice. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "this isn't a request." She turned her head sharply. "You don't understand," she insisted. "I've been responsible for this neighborhood for years. People expect me to act." The officer met her eyes. "Responsibility doesn't look like that," he said, nodding toward the street behind her. Karen followed his gaze. She saw my son, wrapped in a blanket, sitting quietly in his wheelchair, his hand resting on my arm. He wasn't crying anymore. He was watching. That undid her more than shouting ever could. Her voice dropped. "He was in danger," she said weakly. I stepped forward then, not quickly, not angrily, just enough to be heard. "He was waiting for ice cream," I said. Karen flinched. The officer placed a hand on the small of her back, firm but controlled. "Please sit," he said. This time she did, slowly. The back seat swallowed her whole. The officer closed the door. The sound wasn't loud, but it was final. A solid thump that echoed down the block and settled into the bones of Eve. Rion, who heard it. For a moment, no one moved. Then the street breathed again. A man lowered his phone. A woman wiped her eyes. Someone murmured, "Thank God." The patrol car stayed where it was for a few minutes longer. Procedure still mattered. An officer leaned into the front window, speaking quietly into the radio. Another checked the cuffs through the glass, ensuring they were secure but not too tight. Karen stared straight ahead. Her reflection in the window fractured under the flashing lights. Red, blue, splitting her face into pieces she couldn't quite recognize. She raised her cuffed hands once, tapping them against the divider in frustration. "This is unbelievable," she muttered. No one responded. I knelt beside my son again. He leaned into me, his body finally relaxing now that the danger had been contained, processed, labeled. "Daddy," he said softly. "Is she going away?" "Yes," I said. "She is. For a long time?" I considered the question. "For long enough," I said honestly. He nodded. That answer satisfied him. The patrol car engine started. As it pulled away from the curb, the crowd parted instinctively, giving it space. No one cheered, no one shouted. They watched, because watching mattered, because silence this time wasn't fear, it was respect. The car turned the corner and disappeared. With it went the tension that had been gripping the street since the first shout, the first flame, the first scream. Firefighters packed up the last of their equipment. Officers finished collecting statements. One by one, neighbors drifted back toward their homes, glancing at my son with soft expressions, offering quiet words of support as they passed. "You did good, kid," someone said gently. My son smiled faintly. The sidewalk looked the same as it always had, but it wasn't. It was where a line had been drawn, a place where authority met consequence, and lo, I stayed there a while longer, my hand resting on my son's shoulder, watching the sky darken from purple to deep blue. The ice cream truck never came that night, but something else did. Safety, and for the first time since Karen had marched out of her driveway with fire in her hands, that was enough. The sirens faded first, not all at once, but gradually, one engine pulling away, then another, until the street returned to a sound it hadn't known for hours. Normal evening quiet. Crickets started up in the grass. A porch light clicked on somewhere down the block. The breeze moved the trees like nothing had happened. That was the strange part. The world always keeps going. My son sat in his wheelchair near the edge of the driveway, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of laundry soap and kindness from the neighbor who'd brought it. His head rested against my side. He was exhausted now, the kind of tired that comes after fear finally lets go. "You still here with me?" he asked quietly. I squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." He nodded and closed his eyes for a moment, trusting the answer completely. Across the street, Karen's house stood dark and silent. The garage door was still open, a rectangle of shadow where the weed torch had been taken away as evidence. It looked smaller now. Ordinary. Just another house. Power always looks smaller once it's gone. An officer approached me with a clipboard tucked under his arm. His tone was respectful, gentle, very different from the urgency earlier. "Chief," he said, "we've finished statements. Your son's been checked again. Paramedics say he's stable, just shaken." "Thank you," I said. He hesitated. "For what it's worth," he added quietly, "you handled this exactly right." I didn't answer right away, because heroes aren't supposed to be scared afterward. But I was, not of Karen, of how close I came to losing my child. We went inside once the street cleared. The house felt too quiet at first, then too loud in its silence. I made my son some tea the way he liked it, mostly warm milk with a little honey. He drank it slowly, watching the steam rise like it was something worth studying. "Daddy," he said after a while. Why was she so mad? I thought about that, about rules used like weapons, about fear disguised as authority, about people who confuse control with safety. She wanted to feel important, I said carefully, and she forgot people matter more than rules. He thought about that, then nodded. "That's silly," he said. "Yes," I agreed. "It is." The days that followed moved fast. Karen was formally charged. Her HOA position was terminated immediately. A protective order was issued without delay. The board released a statement full of regret and legal language, but everyone knew the truth. They were afraid of accountability now, afraid of being next. Good. Fear has its place, especially when it protects the vulnerable. News trucks came once. I declined interviews. This wasn't a story for cameras. It was a lesson for a neighborhood. My son stayed home from school for a few days. When he went back, his teacher met him at the door and knelt down to his level, speaking softly like he was made of glass. He wasn't. He was strong, stronger than anyone had given him credit for. One afternoon, a week later, we rolled back to the sidewalk, the same spot, same stretch of concrete. The sun was setting again, painting the sky orange and pink like it had that night. My son looked at it for a long moment. "She can't come back, right?" he asked. "No," I said. "She can't, and the fire thing, gone." He nodded, satisfied. The ice cream truck finally came that evening. Its music sounded louder than I remembered. My son smiled wide as it turned the corner, waving with a little more confidence than before. When the truck stopped, the driver leaned out the window. "This one's on me," he said quietly. I didn't argue. My son chose chocolate. Always chocolate. As we sat there eating, the street felt different, not perfect, but safer, and sometimes that's the real victory. Not punishment, not headlines, not revenge. Just knowing that the people you love can exist without fear. Later that night, after my son fell asleep, I stood in the doorway of his room for a long time. The moonlight fell across his blankets. His breathing was slow and steady. I thought about how close everything had come to breaking, and how sometimes stopping a fire doesn't require flames or force, just someone willing to step forward and say enough. Karen had believed no one would stop her. She was wrong. And the world corrected her, quietly, firmly, for good.